Hi, thanks. I'm Rick Cummings from Murdoch University. We've also been working on a strategic project for the OLT. And I'm going to take up the bait that I think Richard deliberately dangled in front of us, as he often does, and that is that in deciding what's required for good teaching, anything goes. So I'm going to take that challenge, and hopefully we'll get some debate out of that during this session. I think universities increasingly are very concerned, and I think, as Andrew pointed out, very concerned about what is quality teaching and how do we go about measuring it. And if some of the points that Andrew raised earlier come to fruition, we'll be even more concerned about how we measure quality teaching and tell people that we have good quality teachers. So as part of the strategic initiative of the OLT that funded Richard's project, the university set up a similar project to look at the professionalization of the academic workforce. What we chose to do was to look at a framework for how we might go about helping universities decide what is good quality teaching and how might they go about measuring that, and to do it in a very rigorous way, in a way which could be used across the various processes, from recruitment through probation, promotion, performance management, and so on. So that's the task that we put in front of ourselves, and we've been working on that for now about a year and a half. The framework is underpinned by a series of principles that have been drawn out of the literature, and there's a vast literature on the quality of teaching. We've developed some indicative criteria and standards and types of evidence that go across the 5 promotional academic levels, and we've developed those into a framework which we have then put out to the sector to be used within each university to develop their own framework, their own institutional framework, to bring together those elements of quality teaching. So we've developed from the literature and from discussions with lots of universities 7 indicative criteria for quality teaching, and these are them. I draw your attention to number 5, which talks about the integration of scholarship, research, and professional activities. And I think picking up on Andrew's comment earlier about separation between research and teaching, certainly in our view, and certainly in the sector's view, it's quite critical that academic staff who are teaching get involved in research and get involved particularly in research on their own teaching so that they can improve it. So the idea of having research skills as an academic, I think, is critical to being an academic. You'll notice these, I don't think any of these criteria will surprise you. The HEA in the UK has a similar set of criteria. They're in a different format. Our task was to take these criteria, which are largely agreed upon, and put them into a framework which would allow institutions to operationalize them within their own unique context. So if we take an example of one of these, so a simple one is criterion 6, which is the evaluation of practice and continuing professional development. So we've set it up so there are the 5 academic promotional levels. If we take the area of participation in teaching-related professional development, you can see a development of that across the 5 levels, moving largely from initial participation to systematic and measurable participation in terms of getting some kind of outcomes out of that in terms of certificates or whatever, moving on to contribution within your institution, leadership, and then contribution and leadership across the sector. There's nothing unique about this. It looks very much like many promotional criteria that you would see in your own institutions. But we might also have some other ways of thinking about this. For example, in the second row, we might have criteria which have a threshold that you reach a point and there's no more need for evidence beyond perhaps senior lecturer, in other words. And we might have another which is a mixture of those two. So we've tried to create a framework which is highly flexible, that allows people to design something that suits their particular institution. We've used the idea of bold to indicate things which we would see as mandatory and threshold standards within a particular area of expertise, but people might choose to do it in their own way. What's important for us is that these are done in a way which is rigorous and measurable. And I think most institutions we've talked to are very interested in solving exactly that problem. We've also collected a lot of information about the types of evidence that might be produced by people trying to show, demonstrate that they've actually met a particular standard within a particular criterion. And here's a set of these that we've put up. Our website has a whole range of these types of evidence that you might find useful. So how do we expect people to use the framework? This is an indicative framework. We've populated it with a variety of things, but we're not expecting you as an institution or any institution to take what we've said as the way you should operate. This needs to be part of a discussion within the institution about the kinds of standards, the criteria, the standards, the types of evidence that are acceptable within your institution for the different levels, and also for perhaps different profiles, including teaching-focused profiles within an institution. So where have we gone with this? There we go. With the kind funding of the OLT, we got some extension money to take this framework and look at implementing it across the sector with a variety of universities. So we've been working with 21 institutions across Australia this year. These are them on the map. To work with them specifically on their particular needs and context. And as you can see, a number of these are also institutions working with TPP projects that Patrick oversees, and they've often brought their project into the discussions we've had and used the two projects and integrated the two projects to actually progress their desire to have more measurable criteria for teaching than they currently do. Now, these institutions are actually doing a number of different things with their particular projects. I've pushed the button and it seems to take a minute to move on. So there we go. So one of the main ways they've done it is to review their existing criteria. Many universities already have criteria for promotion and so on. So they've used this opportunity to actually try to look at a framework approach, use the framework to test, to reflect on their criteria and see how they fit within what might be seen as a national approach to this. And you can see a number of universities are working on this. For example, Macquarie University is currently reviewing their promotional criteria. So they've used the framework as a sort of test against that, a sounding board for that. UWA has used the framework to review their promotion criteria for academic staff in teaching. And as a result of that, they've actually got the research group interested in being more explicit about their particular criteria, which often aren't as explicit as we think they should be in terms of being able to be measured. One of the issues that's come up in working with these institutions is that we find that the criteria for promotion are different from the criteria for probation, are different for the criteria used in performance management. So universities have realized those inconsistencies and have used the framework to try to generate a discussion about making these criteria more consistent across the university and across those processes. Another group of universities is looking at institutional criteria and the evidence for performance management. So how do you build this criteria into the ongoing performance management, which I think is spreading throughout the sector. And finally, another example is that we have 4 dual sector universities involved in this, and they're looking at the problem they have, the unique problem of having 2 different sets of staff in their university. Does one framework apply? If not, are there 2 frameworks? What do they look like? How do they talk to each other? So we've been working with these universities this year. We'll continue to the end of the year. If there are other institutions that haven't been involved, we'd certainly be glad to talk to you, and contact details will be on the last slide. So just very quickly how we've done this. We set up a workshop in May in which all these universities attended in different capital cities, did some work. We've given them a template for working on their project. We'll be meeting with them again in October. In the intervening time, we'll be providing ongoing support to them in their developing their project. At the end, we'll be very keen to have some case studies developed by these universities to be made available to the sector. This is our website. As most OLT projects, we have a lot of project material up on there. The framework is there. It's presented in two versions, one by academic promotion level and one by criteria across promotion levels. It's downloadable as a PDF or as a Word document, and we would expect an institution that wants to work with it to download it and then populate it with your own criteria and standards and evidence. We also have on there a wide range of resources we've picked up off the web and from talking with academics, collected ideas about the kind of evidence that's put forward, how that evidence is framed, again, to help staff meet the criteria that are set within their university. So there's the website and the contact names for this project. We'd certainly welcome any contact with you at all. I hope, if I can just go back to my initial dangling of the bait over the side of the boat, I hope this suggests that actually universities in the sector are very interested in identifying what is quality research and very active in trying to do it within their own institution because they can foresee the need to better measure the quality of our teaching. Thank you.